Hi, and welcome to Chamber Chat. I'm Danielle McFadden, president of the Greater Lowell Chamber of Commerce, and this Inside Lowell podcast is coming to you from the Wellpoint studios. Wellpoint, the only health plan offering healthcare benefits exclusively to Massachusetts GIC members. At Wellpoint, your whole health is their whole point. I'm so excited to have our guests on with us today. From East Point Energy, we have Tyler Rynne, project developer, and Maggie Howe, director of development. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having us.
Thank you
so
for
glad to
being
be here.
This is going to be fun. This is such an interesting business. I can't wait to dive into it. But to start, could you tell us a little bit about your company? Who is East Point Energy?
Yeah.
Sure. East Point is a project developer of battery storage projects based down in Charlottesville, Virginia. I've been there for about 3.5 years. I grew up in Winchester, Mass. originally, so familiar with the area. My dad grew up in Lowell.
Awesome. There's always a Lowell connection
There's
somewhere.
always a connection.
It's incredible.
Yeah. My grandfather owned Lowell and Hartford, the sporting goods store in downtown Lowell.
Yeah.
So maybe some of your listeners know about that. But so been down in Charlottesville for about 3.5 years working for East Point. East Point was started about, 2017, 2018?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I've been with East Point since 2020.
Oh, wow.
And in 2022, we were acquired by Equinor. So we're sort of a small company within a bigger company.
Yeah.
They're a global energy company that started in oil and gas and have diversified into other types of energy like ours, like standalone storage.
Yes, I can't wait to hear more about this. For the listeners who may not be familiar, what exactly is a battery energy storage system?
Yeah, so battery storage, or BESS, as it's kind of quickly known, is it's kind of the Swiss Army knife for the grid. It charges from the substations and power lines and stuff, and takes that energy and puts it back onto the grid when demand is higher. So it's essentially a power bank. It's the same kind of batteries, typically with lithium ion that you find in your phone, laptops, electric cars, things like that. But there's a bunch of different types of energy that can be used for energy storage. There's pumped hydro, which are these giant ponds, basically where they pump water up to the top of a mountain and then drain back down. There's a big one out in Western Mass that uses that technology. But we are mostly focused on lithium ion batteries. It's kind of energy agnostic. It doesn't matter if it's coming from solar, wind, coal, natural gas. It helps all energy types in kind of optimizing their usage. So it can help with demand spikes later in the evening. That's typically what batteries are being used for, especially in Massachusetts. It charges when energy demand is low and prices are low, either overnight or kind of middle of the day when people are at work, and then puts that energy back onto the grid around 5 or 6 o'clock when people are coming home, turning on their ovens, their TVs, plugging in electric cars.
Turning on the lights.
Turning on the lights when the sun's setting
year.
before 5 o'clock. Exactly. It helps kind of balance out that demand later in the evening and help the grid kind of stabilize and keep the supply and demand balanced.
So interesting. How does a BESS facility compare to the more traditional power options?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are different types of generation sources that serve different functions on the grid. So there's like a base load deliverability, which is often things like coal or nuclear, things that are really hard to turn off and on. And so it makes more sense to leave them on all the time to provide that base load. And then, as we were just talking about, you turn your lights on, you plug in your electric vehicle. There's sort of fluctuations throughout the day and different spikes in demand. And so different sources are well suited to meet different production times. Some you can't really decide when they turn on and off, like solar and wind, right? They're going to deliver electricity
interesting point.
when the wind's blowing or when the sun's shining. But batteries can help kind of smooth that deliverability. So if we have too much electricity when the sun's shining, we can charge and then deliver that later on. And then also, we can respond really quickly when there's a spike of demand on the grid. So if everybody's coming home and having a power demand at once, we can quickly turn on and meet that need.
Excellent. A lot of residents are concerned about rising energy bills. I know I am. How do battery facilities help keep enery costs stable?
What a great question.
And I can't wait to hear the answer.
So this is going to get a little technical.
Okay.
If your eyes start to glaze over, just call me back. This is not always what excites people at dinner parties, but it is really important, right? And Massachusetts has some of the highest electricity costs in the nation. I think they're top 5, maybe Hawaii's first, but they're certainly up there. So National Grid is who serves this region, although in Massachusetts you can choose as well. But on any electricity bill, there's typically 2 cost items that you're looking at. So one is your deliverability charge. This is the charge for kind of the cost to build the wires and maintain the wires that are getting the electricity specifically to your house. And it's not necessarily driven based on your use. So think about roads. Whether you work from home and only drive, 50 miles a week or less, or whether you're a big commuter and you're driving hundreds of miles a week, the portion of your taxes that are going to support road improvements and road construction are the same. This is a similar line item on your bill. So it's sort of a steady cost to keep the lights on. The other cost item that you'll see is a supply charge. So this is based on your use case. Think about it like the gallons of water that you consume in your home over a bill cycle. So however much electricity you use will be multiplied by an average cost of electricity over a set period of time. And then that determines that line item. So batteries are great because they help stabilize cost on both fronts. For the deliverability fees, someone like us who is a private entity, we're not a utility, we're what's called an independent power producer. So when we are assigned upgrades for our project on the grid, we hold the cost of that. It doesn't get rate-based and passed on to customers. And we're making improvements that are needed for our project to deliver electricity. They actually have broader benefits for modernizing the grid as a whole. So that's a great way to sort of maximize the benefit and the utility of the grid without necessarily passing on those rate paid, that cost to customers. The other thing that we can do is help get the most mileage out of the sort of infrastructure that's there. So think about like a Target parking lot. It's huge, right? It's designed for like Black Friday sales when hundreds and hundreds of people are in the store. Most of the time it sits mostly empty, right? So the grid is sort of the same way. It's designed for those like highest use days, the worst sort of like 20 hours of the year. It needs to be able to meet capacity and then some, because you need to be able to go above and beyond if our projections are wrong. But batteries can help be strategic in where that electricity is being put onto the grid, so we get the most out of the infrastructure that's there. And a well-placed battery can defer the construction of a new transmission line or other improvements that need to happen on the grid. So they're really helping keep those deliverability costs steady. On the supply side,
like my eyes are not glazed.
Are your eyes glazed over?
No, you're very good at explaining it in a way that I can understand.
That's good.
So
it's tricky, honestly. I've been in this industry for a little over 5 years, and every day I learn more. And every day I learn more, I'm more surprised that the lights are still on. So there's a lot to learn, and it's a really complicated system. So on the supply side, the way that batteries help, Tyler talked about this just a minute ago, but batteries can charge when electricity is inexpensive, and then they put it back on the grid when it's most expensive. And usually those most expensive sources of electricity are what are called peaker plants, and they're coming online for just a couple of hours in the afternoon, maybe 50 days a year, not really that often. And we still need those facilities. Like, I don't think that we're going to get away from having them, but batteries can compete on a cost basis and limit the amount of time that we have to use them, and therefore reduce the electricity at those really highest peak times. The end use customer is not necessarily seeing the full lows and the full highs of electricity pricing, but we as generators are tracking that in like 5-minute increments.
Oh my gosh.
And charging it when it's, really at the bottom, and then able to sort of put it back on and defer that, what would have been that highest price. So on the supply side, there's also a reduction in that peak cost and therefore the average cost over time. Will our specific battery storage project have a line item on your bill that says, thanks, Home and Energy Center, you've brought down my cost this month? No, that's not really how it works. But with an infrastructure of BESS, with many, many BESS projects coming online, kind of like cell towers, one tower is great, but a whole network is going to be better. The more we have, the more these impacts will be felt and the more costs will be stabilized on the grid.
Yeah. The other piece of that too is in Massachusetts, the main incentive program for batteries is called the Clean Peak Standard. And what that essentially is trying to do is clean up the peak of energy demand. So it's reducing fossil fuel reliance during that kind of 5 o'clock to 8 o'clock window that I was talking about, where energy prices are the highest, and it's that peak period. So batteries are incentivized to put energy back onto the grid during that peak window. And also, it's both peak from the demand perspective, but also a cost perspective. And so you're taking the cheaper energy that you're getting either overnight or middle of the day when the sun's shining, and you're putting it back onto the grid when energy costs are the highest. So National Grid, Eversource, Unitil, local utility, whoever you're paying for, their peak energy cost will be reduced with the more batteries you have on the grid. And hopefully it should be passed on to ratepayers in Massachusetts.
That's fascinating. And I'm sure people are thinking, okay, this is great, but can you talk about what type of impact battery facilities can have on the environment?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good question.
Yeah. So as we were talking about, these peaker plants, a lot of them are natural gas, and those come with a lot of side effects, a lot of emissions, elevated asthma rates, things like that. And batteries don't have that. They're charging when energy prices are cheap. So it's either base power from nuclear, hydro up in Quebec, coming into the US, or solar and wind. And so when you're taking these kind of energy supplies and using it in a battery, when the battery is putting energy back onto the grid, there aren't emissions coming off of it. So you can be reducing, pollutants coming from these natural gas peaker plants if they're turning on less as batteries are becoming more and more popular on the grid. And they also are a really small footprint. So a site like Hillman that we'll talk about in a minute, it's only about 4 acres of a site. So it's a really small land area, but it has a big impact for the energy. It's about 125 megawatts, which is about as big as the natural gas plant in terms of energy production. And it's on a very small footprint and doesn't really, when it's operating, at night or during the day or whenever, there's nothing coming off of it. It kind of sits there like a substation, and hopefully you don't even notice it.
That's great. I'm hearing you talk a lot about grid reliability. What exactly does that mean, and how does a BESS help with the life?
Yeah.
I'm thinking of wintertime right now.
Yeah.
Like when you don't want to lose power.
Yeah, exactly. We're coming into winter where
Yeah.
it's so important that the lights stay on and the heat stays on. It can be a real health and safety concern. So grid reliability can mean a lot of different things, but I think the easiest way to think about it is like supply has to exactly equal demand. And demand is always changing. We have some ideas about what we think demand will be. Grid operators sort of predict the curve for the following day based on weather, based on historical patterns. But real time, they have this really tricky job of making sure supply immediately and exactly matches demand. And without that, you can have brownouts and blackouts. There are many ways to sort of help correct that and turn things on and off or curtail power, so kind of divert it from going back onto the grid. But batteries are great because it's a really efficient way. They're kind of like a shock absorber for the grid. So if there's too much, they can absorb a little bit. If there's not enough electricity on the grid, they can put a little bit back on, and they respond like instantaneously. That's another sort of revenue stream. That's another way that batteries can get compensated to be putting or taking electricity on or off the grid.
Learning a lot. This is actually very fascinating stuff. East Point joined the chamber this year. Tell me more about why you joined and what kind of community member you want to be here.
Yeah. These facilities have a long operating life. I mean, we're talking 20, 25, 30 years of operation. And it's really important to us that we're a good community member wherever we are. We're really just at the start of our journey with that, right? We're still in the permitting phase. We're still a few years out from construction, but we want to start to make those connections and to put down those roots here locally. And we really appreciate the opportunity to join the chamber and to continue to meet community members and hear more about how we can help.
That's great. We're excited to have you here, and we love that you have that connection to Lowell as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it was a great area. It's always nice to have a company paid trip home.
Yeah, I know. So everybody's very happy to see you.
And
Nice home cooked meal.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's right.
Beyond energy save. Oh, sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. No, I'm not actually. Beyond energy savings, the project is expected to generate substantial annual tax revenue for Tewksbury. So how will that funding benefit the community? And I'm glad that we touched upon that. You're going to be in Tewksbury.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. This project is at 75 Hillman Street in Tewksbury. It's in a large industrial park right next to one of the biggest substations in Massachusetts, if not kind of the New England region.
Wow.
So it's a super important area in the grid.
Yeah.
And so we were lucky enough to be right next to it. But yeah, the taxes, are a huge benefit to a town like Tewksbury. it's going to be probably over $1 million a year in taxes to the locality,
that's
which is
substantial.
not
Yeah.
something to laugh at. It's a huge benefit to the town. Those taxes are used for schools and infrastructure and all sorts of kind of improvements that the town can allocate how they want.
Great.
And we're also not increasing demand on social services. We're not putting kids in schools. We're not increasing impacts on the sewer systems. We're not increasing, need for police details and things like that. The only kind of impact might be training for the fire department, which we fund, we train them, and we make sure that they have all the tools that they need. So, it's, over $1 million a year in taxes for the locality, but also, with that, you're also not getting increases in social services that might kind of negate some of that benefit.
That's great.
The last piece too is not only are we increasing the taxes, but we're also negotiating what's called a host community agreement with the city right now, which will include both one-time payments, but also annual payments to like the training for the fire department, but also other kind of line items that the town feels are important for them that they want to see kind of as a result of the battery project. So that's currently being negotiated, and hopefully we can share more details about that soon.
Can't wait to hear more about that. We talked a little bit about this kind of in general, but what type of impact will the project have on the environment with this particular project?
Sure. Yeah, no, great question. So Hillman is located on currently it's an industrial site. So it's zoned industrial 2 or heavy industrial. It has a lot of different uses on it right now between landscapers, storing trucks, semi-truck repairs. I think there's about 15 different tenants that are using that site and have been using that site for industrial uses for about 30 years. So there's a lot of different contaminants and hazards that have been kind of identified as a part of our due diligence ahead of permitting. And so we'll be cleaning up the site, making sure that, oil contaminants and stuff will be removed ahead of construction. And protecting kind of the environment around it.
Wow.
The other big piece is we're not impacting any wetlands directly from our site. The only impacts to wetlands might be along kind of the transmission line that we're building to the substation itself. But we've done everything we can to kind of minimize that impact as well. Our project is not impacting wetlands on the site, and then the Gentai route, the transmission line, is trying to keep the impacts as low as possible, and right now they're very low. So some of it's out of our control with National Grid, but trying to do everything we can to make sure that there's as little impact as possible.
Excellent. Let's talk about jobs.
Yeah.
That's a big thing. So what type of how many jobs are you hoping to bring to the community through this project?
Yeah, so during construction, we're looking at probably 40 to 60 jobs using local labor.
That's great.
One thing we're committed to is definitely trying to increase local labor and making sure that we're benefiting the community with that. And then during kind of operations, these sites are unmanned, so there's not a ton of jobs kind of post-construction is complete, but you certainly still need things for operations, maintenance, landscaping, snow clearing, all of that kind of stuff. So while it might not be a factory or something like that, there certainly are still some long-term benefits that the community will see from that.
That's excellent. I love that you're dedicated to using local people. That's great. Safety. Let's talk a little bit about safety. It's always, top of mind when it comes to new infrastructure. So what precautions are being taken to ensure that the facility is safe for the community?
Yeah. Safety is hugely important to us. And actually to our parent company. That was something we were really excited to see, to find a match with them. So their background is in offshore oil and gas drilling, which you can imagine is tricky.
Yeah.
And there's
a good word.
There's a huge focus on safety as part of their operations base. And that's something that's been passed on to us and something that we feel is really important as well. So safety is always sort of the top line consideration when we're thinking about designs and we're thinking about implementation and operation of this project. There have been some fires related with battery energy storage facilities. So this is one of the first questions that we get. And one of the first contacts that we always want to make locally is to connect with the fire department and make sure they've got information and make sure they've got access to training to understand what it would mean to have a facility like this in their response area. So when I think about safety, there's really like 3 buckets that I'm thinking about. So the first is safety and design. So thinking about code compliance, thinking about using industry best practices, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Prevention is sort of the next bucket. And then the last bucket is emergency response preparedness. So making sure that if it's in the very unlikely event that a fire does happen, that we're ready and that everybody's equipped and ready to respond. But coming back to sort of codes and standards for a minute, which is another very exciting topic. There is a national fire code, so NFPA 855, which specifically governs battery energy storage systems. So it covers things like spacing between containers, requirements prior to construction around hazard mitigation analysis, decommissioning requirements. Like it sort of covers all the different scenarios you could think about. And then each technology that you select has a unique way that they're meeting those safety requirements. There's a unique safety package that they're putting together. The manufacturer that we're using for this facility, Hythium, has done a great job in providing the materials and resources that are needed to kind of put together an adequate response plan. And a lot of that's in our permitting application packet, if anybody wants to dive into the details. But yeah, thinking about codes and standards are really important. NFPA 855 is the big one. Yep. Another one that I think is worth mentioning is called UL 9540A. So it's a fire test, a burn test. And it's kind of crazy. I don't know of any other industry that does this, but what they do is they take one of the Connex containers. So it's like a 20-foot, imagine like on the back of a semi truck. Yeah. That's sort of the standard unit. It's all integrated. All the batteries, all the monitoring systems are built into that. And they force that unit to catch on fire. They start at the gosh, it's crazy. No. It's very expensive.
Yeah,
and it's a little
I bet.
Crazy. But they start at like the cell level, and then they go to the next level, which is the module, and then the rack, and then the whole unit. And what they're trying to understand is how good is the design at containing the fire. So if a fire starts in a specific cell, what's the likelihood that we can contain it to that area and take it out before a bigger incident occurs? And I think most of the time there's an issue at the cell level. We detect it and then we repair it, and this never happens. But they want to force that failure and understand and study, what does it look like? How long does it take to burn out? What gases are coming off of it? And there's all sorts of data that come from that burn test. It's on my bucket list to see one live. Haven't done that yet. But it's a really helpful data set to help inform kind of what the response would later be. And every battery, Hythium included, that's on the market here in the US has to go through that fire burn testing.
Interesting. Wow.
So yeah, kind of crazy.
Yeah.
There's one incident. There have been a couple of battery storage incidents for fires. Again, it's a very small percentage of the hundreds that are in operation in the U.S. today. But one that gets a lot of airtime is the Moss Landing facility. So this is a facility out in Monterey, California. It was, I think, a 300 megawatt facility that was built into an old fossil plant. So this is like, imagine like a huge room for a power plant, and they just loaded racks and racks and racks of batteries in there. Not the Connex design, but just like server racks. And it really goes against everything we know in terms of best practices today for containment and building in those like fire walls or fire blocks in the structure. And unfortunately, that facility had an incident earlier this year that resulted in a pretty sizable and a pretty newsworthy fire. The industry has learned a lot since that date, and I just want to emphasize that it's something we take seriously. We're doing everything we can to learn from that, but the design of our battery system is totally different. And so it's really apples to oranges when we're thinking about the concerns there.
Yeah. So with these full-scale burn tests, they also, the main purpose of it is to make sure that they're not propagating between containers. So one of the challenging parts with lithium batteries are they're hard to put out. Dousing them with water doesn't do a whole lot. It just kind of prolongs how long they're going to be on fire. And so the main goal with these UL tests that they're doing is to prevent propagating between containers. So if you're able to stop it within one container, it burns itself out and it's done. 6 to 8 hours is kind of what the experts are saying right now for a fully involved container. And so these UL tests are designed to prove that, yes, one container might burn, but it's not going to propagate into other ones. And that's what these tests are showing. And you're not able to build projects today without showing that, it'll stay to one container. And so, we feel confident in that. I've been working with a number of first responding groups and groups that specialize in battery storage safety and actually conduct the burn tests themselves. And then we also are working with the local fire department. So this is part of the kind of second bucket of prevention. one, there will be 24/7 monitoring, 365 days a year, somebody sitting in a chair watching these facilities. So we have some projects in Texas that are coming online soon that will have a similar setup. And so we're kind of getting our feet wet, learning about the process and learning what that all looks like through that. But that will be certainly part of this project, and making sure that somebody is watching it, somebody's monitoring it for any sort of abnormalities, whether it's heat or moisture or off-gassing, things like that. The second piece is preventative maintenance. So put together a full maintenance plan for a facility like this that includes checking up on each container and cell almost monthly, I think, if not more frequently.
More often,
yeah. And then the third bucket is preparedness. So meeting with the fire department, we actually met with them this morning to kind of go over our draft emergency response plan. But that partnership is super important, making sure the fire department, one, feels comfortable with knowing how to respond to an incident if there is one. And so this emergency response plan is a work in progress and gets updated every year that the facility is operating. But that's a huge part of kind of the response to if there is a fire there, making sure the fire department knows how to do that, and then making sure they have the equipment that they need to fight a fire there as well is certainly something that we've been working with the fire department to make sure they have the equipment in the future. And as a part of the host community agreement that we were talking about earlier, kind of formalizing what equipment they're getting from us and making sure that, they feel comfortable and know what to do in the case of an emergency.
Yeah. I want to emphasize, we just spent a lot of time talking about battery fires. The likelihood of that type of event is actually very low. But we want to be prepared for a worst case scenario. And it's important that that's the case, and that if it does fail, that it fails safely, and that no human life or no environmental component is in danger.
I think anybody listening or viewing is happy to hear that we talked about this for a while, because it shows how seriously you take it, right? If you just brushed over it, then there might be some concerns, but clearly you've thought about anything and everything.
We spent a lot of time thinking about this. Yeah.
Sit at home with a glass of wine on Friday night thinking about what would happen.
That's right.
Some residents are located near the project, and they're wondering potentially about noise. Is East Point considering measures to address any of noise concerns from neighbors?
No, it's a great question. So I think, a couple parts to this. One is Tewksbury has their own sound policy and bylaw that is pretty strict. It mandates, what your sound levels are allowed to be at depending on what the adjacent uses are. So whether it's industrial or residential, and we're well within the standards for that. So we've done sound modeling with consultants, and then that's part of our application to the Siting Council. You can go check out that report if you need something to fall asleep to at night and you're staying up late. But so we've done full modeling of kind of what the anticipated sound impacts are. And we're well within the state standard, or the Tewksbury standard. And then Massachusetts also has their own state policy that is even stricter than Tewksbury.
Massachusetts has a lot of policies.
They have a lot of policies, which is great. It's important to make sure development's done the right way and minimizes impact to neighbors and the environment and things like that. And so Massachusetts is one of the longer time periods for permitting projects, but I think it's important to make sure that you're showing you're doing this the right way, your impacts are low, and that's what the Siting Council is for, which is where the project is right now. Is their job is to make sure that impacts to the public are minimized in kind of the best ways possible. So sound is certainly a huge component of that. The other piece with this project is we're using, when we were picking a vendor for it, we wanted to make sure that the equipment was quiet. So we chose one of the quieter vendors on the market for that. That also is able to give us, kind of the fire safety data that we feel like we need and want to be able to share publicly. And then we also have sound walls and things like that to kind of insulate the noise from the surrounding community as well. So we're within the Tewksbury standard, we're within the state policy, and then using kind of the equipment that we can to minimize the noise even further. So if you want to go check out the noise report, you're welcome to. But so noise is certainly a concern, but the impact should be minimal, if any. Check out the report.
When you go into other states now, you must feel like there's such the high standard here that it makes
it truly. If you can develop in Massachusetts, we've taken a lot of the requirements in Massachusetts and extracted lessons learned that we're applying other places because the bar really is so high here. Yeah, in a good way. I mean, it's for good reason to protect residents, and we're here for that.
Yeah, a lot of best practices in it, and it certainly shows that you're here for it, because just the thought that has gone into this is pretty remarkable. What is the timeline for the Hillman Energy Center, and what can residents expect in the months ahead?
Yeah. You
Reading reports.
That's right. Reading lots of reports. So we're right now in front of the EFSB, which is the Energy Facility Siting Board, which is a state level sort of permitting process. This chapter of the development process takes about a year. So we applied back in April, and we expect to hear back from them next April. And that's actually faster than the historical track record. So we're feeling pretty good about that. But this is the moment where we're trying to hear from the community. So there's an open comment period. Anybody can offer comments of support or concern. And then the next step is that the state will compile all of those and send us a list of more formal questions. They're called interrogatories. And we then have a chance to respond to those. And it's very transparent. Everybody can log in, read the full application packet, see the questions that are coming in, see the comments that are coming in. And that's really like just one phase, right? There's additional permitting that we'll do at the local level after that. And then there's kind of our procurement timeline where we're deciding which construction company we'll bring on, final vendor purchasing. So we're really, the earliest that we would really start construction is probably Q1 of 2028. So these development timelines are very long. Yeah. They're very long.
Must feel so good when you finally get to like the groundbreaking.
Totally. We have 2 that are under construction in Texas, and we're very close to groundbreaking at a few more sites, and it just feels
great.
It's a great day when dirt starts to move. So yeah, we've got a long journey to go, and like we said earlier, we really are committed to being community partners and getting to know more about Tewksbury and the greater Lowell area. And we look forward to meeting more people along the way and getting more input about how we can better serve the community and better be a community member.
Excellent. Yeah, and we'll have to have you back on when the next phase or whenever you want to talk more.
That's right.
Yeah, always happy to talk about batteries.
Yeah.
Well, I know who to call when I feel like talking about batteries.
That's right. We're here.
We can include your website when we post the information.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would like the listeners or viewers to know, or did we touch upon everything right now?
No, I think we covered it. Thank you so much for these great questions and a great opportunity to kind of talk through it. And I hope it reads that we're real people, we're approachable, we want to have conversations about this. So if there are questions out there, please reach out.
Excellent. Well, thank you both so much. Thank you for your commitment to the community. That's refreshing and it's great. So we appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thank you. And thank you all for tuning in to another edition of Chamber Chat. We will be back again soon.